Hello everyone, welcome to a new video for Bitcoin price prediction based on Elliott wave analysis. Happy Easter Sunday, and of course we started our Sunday with some red. Normally a Sunday is very slow in the morning, and especially when it is holiday. Maybe this is the idea or the trap for the market today, but we're gonna see of course what's going on. Well, we expected yesterday in the deep analysis that we might get, of course, if you go back to the micro analysis yesterday, we said, of course, be careful from a wave E as well, that it might unfold. However, it was a little bit far possibility that because of the time taken for this wave D, of course, in regarding the time of the wave C before, well, still possible even. Time is never an invalidation, but of course we still can count A, B, C, and then D, and a potential wave E toward the downside. Currently, we are inside this area right now for a wave E until, of course, invalidation of this triangle, taking the low of the wave C here, where the wave E, of course, interfere with the wave C, meaning, of course, invalidation of this triangle. And that means, of course, we cannot expect an A, B, and a C anymore. Currently, you are still inside this wave E, and you might, of course, see a move toward the upside, as, of course, be careful, it's a bear trap might be, of course, in this case scenario. And we might see, of course, three waves toward the downside here. As you can see, it is not an impulse, and that because, of course, of the three waves on the 15-minute chart, even on the most micro, which is the 5-minute chart, we can see three wave and not an impulse for a wave one. And that means, of course, something, right? We cannot really consider this as a big impulse as 1, 2. Potentially it might be A, B, and a C, and it might finish for a wave E and then moving toward the upside very soon. So be careful from this trap. Yes, so these are the possibility for this area. The next possibility, in case we break, of course, this triangle, we are looking therefore for this first scenario where you might have finished 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5 for a wave 1. You're looking at an A, B, and a C where you got an impulse correction and an impulse towards the downside for a wave 2. However, as I mentioned, this impulse is a little bit questionable with three waves towards the downside. It's still, of course, possible something else to unfold here, but yeah, I mean, sometimes there is some deviation in the market, especially for weekend when we see such intense move towards the downside. Potentially can transform to 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5. But of course, you want to finish a wave 2 around this area and then start to estimate a wave 3 to unfold toward the upside. In case you are impulse, don't forget that this impulse might unfold something even bigger because you are impulsive 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You might see a wave 2 or a wave B and then wave C or a wave 3 after all, and taking the new all-time high. Be careful. And also opening as well the chance or the possibility, as we saw yesterday in the deep analysis, the chances for a bullish scenario, which is on the daily with a wave 5. You can go back to the deep analysis already made yesterday. So the last scenario that we are estimating is the same, but rather than having wave 2, we're gonna have a wave B, meaning A, B, C simply finishing there and moving toward the downside after finishing a bigger wave B, and your wave A finished here, meaning, of course, you have finished here three waves down, right? Three waves down for the A. You have three waves up for the B, and you're looking for a big wave C towards the downside. Now, of course, let's start with the indicators analysis. Since this is a indicators analysis video, I just want to remind you in the micro possibilities here and to see how it might work. But before we move for the indicator, one last, of course, bearish scenario that it might unfold, of course, is a ending diagonal for an ABC, right? We have an A, B, and a C. The last wave C is this ending a diagonal. And that means, of course, that you would like to see this rather than being A, B, C for a wave 2. You would like to see it a 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5. And meaning, of course, once you break the 1-to-1 fib level, you start to have higher possibility as, of course, an impulse and finishing a zigzag for a wave 3 here in an ending diagonal. So, Basically, the scenario is still, of course, a little bit far. Higher chances for this ending diagonal is, of course, by breaking this wave 1 first. Second, higher chances is by breaking, of course, the wave 2, 1-to-1 fib level continuation. Therefore, of course, the chances increases, of course, to reach a wave 3 in the low here. All right, so let's start with the RSI. So very interesting price action on the 1 hour chart for the RSI. As you can see, we have a very strong divergence here with the price action, where you can see as well here. We have, of course, this divergence on the 1 hour chart. Here we go. So we start to see also that we are in the oversold area, that we might start to move toward the upside very soon. Another signal as well that we can see on RSI here, of course, is this one, exhaustion as well of buying. As you can see, you have a convergence from the top, you have divergence from the down, and that means, of course, much more consolidation in this area is showing up as well on the RSI. However, we are in the oversold area. That means, of course, we might move toward the upside. And if this happens, of course, that might turn it, of course, into a BCDE triangle and moving for higher prices. Let's check as well a bigger view for the RSI on the 4 hour chart. So on the 4 hour chart, we can see as well there are some convergence here in the tops. Check, here we go, and this one as well. So we see the price still moving with a low direction towards the downside. However, here also we have a strong, no, it's not a divergence actually. We don't have really yet a divergence, and I believe, of course, on the 4 hour chart it shows a little bit, of course, a possibility to move toward the downside. Now the 1 hour chart, of course, it means locally it might move for higher, right? And that means a little bit, it doesn't mean that it might break, of course, the triangle. On the 4 hour chart, we see, of course, much more gap here that it might, of course, still fill in case, of course, it moves for an ABC, for example. It might reach, of course, the oversold area on the 4 hour chart. So that opens a little bit higher possibility, of course, to move toward the downside, actually. For an ABC. On the daily for the RSI, well, we already had this from the last time, last analysis. We have, of course, this exhaustion of selling, right? And we saw, of course, some buying, but I don't see yet, of course, any kind of signal on the RSI for higher. I still see it a little bit going for lower, and that because of the convergence of the price with the RSI. So we see almost the same direction still towards the downside. There is no really exhaustion yet. So that means, of course, opening a little bit higher potential for, of course, lower prices. This is what the RSI says. Let's move to the MACD. So on the MACD, it's nice to start with the daily. And as you can see, of course, on the daily, we have some green candles. However, transferring to the light green, and that means, of course, there is not so much volatility in this move toward the upside, or this volume of buyers that we saw. Of course, now we have a bullish cross here moving toward the upside. The trend are still, of course, under the zero and was not broken yet. Now, if the trend wants to continue and break the zero, I would say definitely we're moving for, of course, a bullish scenario here. However, the volume doesn't show really interesting price action that it might move towards the upside. I still see, of course, lower volume starting from this area, and the volume of buyers is, of course, lowering down, knowing also that the sellers' volume is lowering down as well. So we're gonna see, of course, on the daily, not very clear, but tending to be much more bearish than bullish. It might, of course, reverse in this area, have some red volume, and then, of course, continue towards the downside, potentially opening a scenario for the diagonal here. Yes, so on the 4 hour chart, okay, very interesting. On the 4 hour chart, we see, of course, the trend line having the crosses and start to open towards the downside. However, it's still over the zero. Don't forget, it can play kind of like a resistance here and start to move for higher. It means possibly it can of course get the ABC and then move for higher here. Yeah, so kind of like this. So basically I would say that most of the indicator right now, RSI and MACD, and most of the old time frame shows of course lower prices are expected. Potentially we can see of course a lower, but yeah, I still see on the 4-hour chart like the volume of buyers is increasing here. But look at this signal here. When you get always this type of volume here, that is a signal of course of weakness, exhaustion on the MACD as well. On the 1-hour chart, yeah, we already dropped inside of course the selling area, and of course potentially it is opening here after a bearish signal. And yeah, we see the volume increasing, right? The volume of the sellers are increasing, and that means of course opening much higher possibility to take the wave C, all right? Can be as well. Let's take a look at KGT. So on the KGT 15-minute chart, of course, you can see that we have a convergence as well with the bearish signals, where you see, of course, the price action moving toward the downside, meaning more pressure for lower. And obviously that this was a signal, even a weaker signal. Let's move for the weaker. Here we go. And we move toward the downside with it, potentially as 1, 2, and then 3, 4, and a 5, of course, for lower here. If we move even for the 5-minute chart inside it, we can see, of course, a very clear signal. This is the signal that I showed in the 15-minute chart. On the 5-minute chart, it shows already on the 500, meaning a very strong convergence and moving toward the downside. However, on the KGT, also shows a divergence, of course, for a wave E. So be careful, it can be a wave E, or possibly it can be a wave 4 and a 5, of course, for this impulse to finish. However, as I mentioned, be careful, this is 3 waves and not impulsive wave 1, 2, meaning A, B, and a C can be finishing, of course, over there. And I suggest to be careful because it might move directly toward the upside for a wave E. If KGT, of course, shows this as a divergence, now it is not very strong divergence, but still a divergence, meaning it's gonna move a little bit higher. It might be a wave 4. But if we see, of course, continuation impulsively, it might be, of course, a breakout for this triangle. Now, of course, on the 3-minute chart as well, it's going to show the same very strong divergence as well. Is the latest signal that we have here. And, of course, we have the bearish signal as well. So I suggest that, okay, KGT is showing basically the local price action that it might move for higher here. And if we dive a little bit deeper inside this impulse, we have 1, 2, 1, 2, and wave 3 potentially, and then 4, 5. So basically, even I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5 finished. 4 and a 5. Also, we see another leg here. So be careful, it might be finished even like 1, 2, 3, and then 4 and a 5, somehow like this. And it can, of course, move toward the upside. So be careful with this scenario as well, guys. So we're going to see what's going to happen later. But I think that, of course, I mean, KGT is still giving a little bit higher potential for, of course, higher prices. I don't know. I trust also KGT even a little bit more than other indicators. And that's why, of course, yeah. It shows right now, of course, a strong signal. Even, is it on the 15-minute chart? I would like to see the 15-minute chart, how much the strength it is of this bullish. Okay, this bullish signal strength is at 274, which is the half almost of it. So it's not bad. I think even if it moves a little bit down, it's going to give the 500 here. And even it might, okay, it might create, yeah, this divergence is already there. I think, yeah, it's already there. That means, of course, here, the more we move down, the stronger the bullish scenario comes in. Okay, guys, this is what does it mean on KGT. So yeah, we have to watch this as well. Remember, invalidation of triangle, yeah, 83, 129. Final indicator that I would like to see is the Bollinger Band. So on the 1-hour chart for the Bollinger Bands, we see, of course, that we have reached already the lower part of this band, and we start to extend it. And that means, of course, it is a strong resistance or support right here, right now. when you see, of course, an extension. Now, it doesn't mean that it cannot be broken. It can be broken. However, it is, of course, much more confirmed when both bands move toward the downside, of course, for a downtrend. We still see here a sideways bands, and that means, of course, you did not exit this support yet. And in case we take a look at the daily, you are on the upper part of this Bollinger Band, and that means, of course, you have a strong resistance here in the middle, and that gives, of course, higher potential for the ABC, meaning A, B, and a C toward the upside, or 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5. So to break this blue band, of course, is a little bit hard. This is represent always the strongest support on the chart here. And of course, it might, of course, bring the price for higher again. So these are the indicators for Bitcoin. Also, I would like to check one last thing, only the volume on the 1 hour chart or even on the 15-minute chart to see and to show you that the volume indicates no impulse in this area yet. Like we have, of course, definitely here a wave 3. You see high amount of volume. So this is your wave 3, and you got another high amount of volume starting from this one here. This candle very strong also, and you have this one as a wave 5. So be careful, we might have finished, of course, this impulse. If this is your wave 3 indication here on the volume, meaning your wave 5 is done and you're looking for higher, as the KGT says, on the 3-minute chart, we saw this strong signal of buying, of course, with the divergence. That was it for Bitcoin. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your likes and comments.